Circuit of the Americas. One of the best races I have seen in the next gen car. Lucky enough to be on site covering that race for Apollo, the 2025 EchoPark Automotive Grand Prix. It was an instant classic. I thought that was about as good of a race as we've seen in this car on the road courses. Kudos to the team at Circuit of the Americas and NASCAR for the new layout. I think the shorter layout played a difference in the race. And the tire fall off. We saw Goodyear and NASCAR bring a softer tire, which made tires matter throughout the race. We saw comers and goers. We saw strategy plays at the end of stages. This race had a little bit of everything. So let's dive into what happened. It didn't take long for things to kind of kick off. We had Ross Chastain, turn one, lap one, stage one, kind of dive in, spin Chase Elliott out, pretty much send Elliott to the back for the rest of the day. Denny Hamlin, Connor Zilisch, Ty Gibbs all kind of got some damage in that incident. Just kind of checked up the field. Stage one had a few incidents, nothing that caused a caution though. Another notable thing that happened in stage one was Austin Cindric spinning Ty Dillon on the front stretch. You look at the in-car cameras and it looked like a case of somebody getting right reared, which NASCAR isn't too fond of. So we'll see what comes of that, if anything. The remainder of the stage, pretty clean. You had a few guys get caught up in the S's for track limits. An interesting point there is, earlier in the week, before we got to Circuit of the Americas, NASCAR had some barriers out there to prevent people from cutting the S's, but the drivers on the track walk were pretty adamant that those barriers were in a place that was not necessarily safe. They were worried about the amount of damage that was going to cause to the cars. So NASCAR did get rid of the barriers and instead went with the track limits policy that they had at Circuit of the Americas prior. Now, one interesting note here is that, the penalties for the S's applied to turns 3, 4, and 5. It did not, however, apply to turn 6, and there was a little bit of confusion about that among the drivers. Some guys didn't find out until the race had already begun. I think some guys knew from the start. But that was kind of a point of confusion for a lot of the drivers. They thought 6 was going to be included in the track limits policy. And then obviously you had the new section right after 6 into 6A and 6B, which set up some great passing zones. But Bubba Wallace ended up winning the stage. A lot of the leaders pitted to flip the stage. Again, that's the strategy component that we kind of talked about at the outset of this video. Really, really good stage one. I enjoyed it. Stage two, not really any major incidents. The biggest thing to talk about was Kyle Larson having a loose wheel, and the 5 getting penalized for that. Obviously, that's going to have ramifications for next week at Phoenix as well, or this coming week. Connor Zilisch, watching him carve through the stage or carve through the field in stage 2 was a blast. You really got to see the talent level that Zilisch has. Obviously, he's still got some learning to do. I think we saw that from the Xfinity race, and he admitted it himself. He's an 18-year-old, right? Like, there is a lot to look forward to with him, but a lot of growth for him as well, and he acknowledges that. But watching him carve his way through the field was a lot of fun. Got himself into a really good position for stage 3. And then, similar to stage 1, a guy that maybe wasn't up at the front capitalized on the leaders pitting to flip the stage. Ryan Preece ends up winning the second stage. I think this is where a lot of folks maybe think there was like a lull in the racing. And to be honest with you, I kind of disagree. Again, watching Zilisch kind of work his way up to the field was good action. Shane Van Gisbergen and Kyle Busch battling. That was some good fun there. So a lot of things to watch during this race. If there was a lull, this would be the section of the race that there was one. But again, I think part of that may be more on the broadcast than the actual racing itself, because we saw some great racing throughout the field. Stage 3, this is where things kind of kicked off, featured a little bit of everything. The first caution of incident for the race was Daniel Suarez spinning turn 19, and Connor Zilisch gets kind of caught up in it trying to avoid the wreck. Disappointing into the day for the young phenom. Disappointing for Suarez as well. Had a great car. I know Trackhouse is probably feeling the effects of that. Obviously, having two of their cars caught up in the incident. It's just one of those things where you're racing hard, you're pushing hard. Track position matters very much at this style of track, and I think Suarez just kind of got caught up on the curbing a little bit, and it caught him out. And Zilish was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, tried to go outside to miss Suarez, clips him, and ends up in the tire barrier in that turn. The ensuing restart after that, Kyle Busch jumped out to a commanding lead. Christopher Bell was pushing him at times. The 20 car was really good on the short run. I think we saw some interesting strategy play out there. Kyle Busch was one of the earlier leaders to pit during green flag stops, and Christopher Bell stayed out for a little bit longer. Talking to Adam Stevens after the race, the thought process there was the 20 was better on fresher tires, so they wanted to go longer to have those fresher tires to really push at the end. And it set up, and it looked like it was going to be a green flag run to the finish. With Bell needing to kind of catch up to Busch. I think when the green flag pit stops cycled through, it was about a 6-second lead for Kyle Busch. But Bell had closed that gap some by the time the next caution came out. And this incident was, we didn't really see what started it, but Denny Hamlin seemed like he was locked up going into the turn and made pretty solid contact with the three of Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon ends up in the gravel, beached, and when that happens, they have to throw the caution to get the cars out. So that set up the final run to the finish, 13 laps in the race. And this is where things were just incredible. I mean, it was just picture perfect, clean, hard road course racing. Kyle Busch maintained the lead after the restart. Christopher Bell had those slightly fresher tires, and the battle was on. These two were going at it, but it was clean racing. They made contact at times, but it wasn't like a case of Bell moving Kyle Busch out of the way. He really pressed him. At one point in turn one, it looks like Bell's going to dive bomb Busch, and I think Bell came in there a little bit too hot, and he bails out of the pass. And he admitted to the fact after the race in the press conference that he was conscious of the history that the 20 and the 8 have had here at Circuit of the Americas, but he also wants to be known for racing people clean. And I think that the way he passed Kyle Busch was just kind of an indicator of that. He was really clean, battling super hard, but not going over that line. And we saw the same thing with William Byron coming through, completing the pass on Kyle Busch not too long after Bell did. I think Busch burned up his tires pretty bad trying to hold off Bell. Can't blame him. Really wants that first win, and now I guess it'll be 60 races. But, obviously with the drought, he was pushing as hard as he could. The thing was, after Bell took the lead, the race wasn't over. William Byron was pushing him extremely hard. And similar to Bell passing Kyle Busch, Byron had opportunities to really move Christopher Bell out of the way, but it was a very clean, hard racing battle to the finish. And Reddick in there as well. I mean, this was just a thriller to watch, about as good as you can get on a road course in NASCAR. Again, I think this next-gen car, this was the best road course race we've seen from this car on a road course. Just really, really a good sign of things to come, especially with that softer tire. If we have tire fall off like that, I think it's something that NASCAR fans should be looking forward to on this style of circuit. Again, very happy with the new layout. I think that helped with the racing as well. You had the passing zone there in 6A, really set up a lot of passes all day long. So it worked out. Caution laps were shorter. Just all around, I think this weekend was a win for NASCAR. Christopher Bell wins 2 in a row, and two very different styles of track, right? You get the win at Atlanta and then the win on the road course at Circuit of the Americas. Has to be feeling good about where they stand heading into the rest of the season. Obviously this week, another different style of track. We're back on an oval, but this time it's kind of the short track of Phoenix. Will be interesting to see how the cars kind of handle. But again, really grateful to have been out at Circuit of the Americas covering that race. I think if you were a fan watching at home, you were pretty happy about the product on track. The fans in the stands were great. They really enjoyed that race as well. You could hear audibly how excited they were for those battles in the closing lap between Bell and Busch, and then Bell and Byron. But yeah, I mean, if that's the indication of what we're going to get with the softer tires and the road course product, I cannot wait for the rest of the season, going to places like Mexico City, Sonoma, Watkins Glen, the Chicago Street Course. This was a lot of fun. So stay tuned for more NASCAR content from Apollo. We appreciate all the support, and we'll get you another video after Phoenix.